Wondery.
It's August 2001, and Enron CEO Jeff Skilling has left the building. Sherron Watkins sits patiently outside Rex Rogers' office. She still can't believe the #1 energy trading company in America is heading into a hurricane and the captain has abandoned ship. This tells Watkins a few things. As CEO, Skilling knows what she knows and resigned because Enron engaged in illegal activity and will soon get caught. The irony of this is that Watkins herself had planned to quit the very same day. She pictured herself breaking the news to Andy Fastow, then marching back to her office, collecting her belongings, and walking out the front door, never to return. But Skilling beat her to it. The man Business Week put on its cover, the man who had drunkenly declared, "I am Enron," at a company party. People don't know that the good ship Enron is about to hit the shoals, and Skilling left them to face the consequences of what he'd done. He didn't try to make it right. He just ran away. The moment Skilling announced his resignation, Watkins made a decision. She would do what she could to make this right, and that's why she wrote the memo. "Sherron, come in." Rex Rogers is an Enron attorney, a dour, pale man with thinning hair. He does not offer to shake her hand. Dusty books and paperwork are stacked all around his office, and it smells like mildew. Rogers clears his throat and begins. "So you're the one." I'm the one? I'm sorry. I don't think please. You wrote the memo. Sorry, but around here, anonymous would-be whistleblowers don't stay anonymous for long. It wasn't hard to trace this document to you, trust me. Rogers puts on his glasses and begins to read. "Dear Mr. Lay, has Enron become a risky place to work? For those of us who didn't get rich over the last few years, can we afford to stay? Skilling's abrupt departure will raise suspicions of accounting improprieties." And so on and so on. Rogers looks up briefly, registers Watkins' astonishment, and then continues. "Skilling is resigning, quote, for personal reasons, but I think he wasn't having fun. Looked down the road and knew this stuff was unfixable and would rather abandon ship now than resign in shame in 2 years, and on and on. I'm incredibly nervous, you said, that we will implode in a wave of accounting scandal." Sherron, was all of this really necessary? Yes, Rex, I believe it was. Well, if that's true, how come Rick Causey, Andy Fastow, and the general counsel don't think it's anything to worry about? Listen. Fastow's been enriching himself through LJM for years. That's a problem. And when his Raptors collapse, the losses for Enron will be enormous. Lay doesn't understand the danger facing the company. And frankly, Rex, it sounds like you don't either. I really don't. And I don't know what I'm supposed to do with all this. What I would like, Rex, is for you to arrange a face-to-face between me and Lay. I can help him. I have a plan. I know we can save the company. It won't be easy. It won't be neat, but we can do this. Enron employs nearly 10,000 people. They don't deserve to lose their jobs and pensions and maybe everything they own over this. I'm asking for your help. Please. Rogers removes his glasses, leans in, and lowers his voice. Let me ask you something, Sherron. You really want to take your concerns to Lay? Vincent and Elkins, Arthur Anderson, they all signed off on these deals. Andy Fastow is a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. He's not this crook you make him out to be. Why would he, our accountants, and our law firm risk everything they have on something only you say is illegal? Watkins just swallows. The answer is so obvious, she's embarrassed to say it out loud. They did it out of greed. Watkins realizes she will receive no help from this man. He will bury her concerns under one of the moldy stacks of paper in his office and deny she was ever here. She's at a dead end. She tried her best, tried to redeem Enron, and failed. Tears of frustration burn in her eyes. Rogers takes notice, and she looks down. She senses that Rogers is taken aback. Hey, Sherron, listen. I do think you're blowing things a little out of proportion, but I'm not part of some sort of cover-up if that's what you're worried about. You're important to this company, Sherron. If you want to talk to Ken Lay, you're entitled to do it, and I'll arrange it. Watkins manages a tentative smile. I appreciate that, Rex. He stands. I have a meeting coming up. Can I walk you out? At the door, Roger stops and waits for her eyes to meet his. I need to warn you, though. It may be a while before you hear anything. These are sensitive matters, and things take time. Watkins' smile fades. Time is the one thing Enron doesn't have. American Scandal is sponsored by the new Audible original Bad Republican by Meghan McCain. In her debut audio memoir, Meghan McCain gives a first-hand look into the life of the conservative rebel and departing co-host of The View. You'll hear what it's like to grow up as the daughter of an American icon and to mourn his loss very publicly just 1 year into her tenure as co-host of America's most-watched daytime talk show. Her memoir also reveals how she handled attacks from the U.S. president and her thoughts on cancel culture, dating, and how our country treats new mothers. It's unsparingly honest, deeply relatable, and highly entertaining. Go beyond what you know about Meghan McCain from TV and your newsfeed. Visit audible.com/badrepublican and listen now.
We get support from the new podcast, Hemingway's Picasso. Stephen Coe lived many lives. He was an NFL journeyman, a male model, and one of the most well-connected smugglers in 1980s Miami. Coe collected many souvenirs from his adventures, but his most treasured bounty, a beautiful ceramic crafted by Pablo Picasso and gifted to Ernest Hemingway at the author's Cuban home. So the story goes. Lost during the Cuban Revolution, the artwork resurfaced when Coe took it as payment for a drug run financed by the notorious Pablo Escobar. Coe passed away in 2018, passing the piece down to his son, Stevie. Stevie feels he needs to complete his father's mission of selling this piece and telling Steve's cinematic life story. Is the Picasso authentic or a fraud? Was Steve Coe a big talker or a real deal smuggler? Listen to new episodes of Hemingway's Picasso every Monday wherever you get your podcasts.
From Wondery, I'm Lindsey Graham, and this is American Scandal. "16 years after its founding, Enron was a company sliding inexorably into a crisis of its own making. A falling stock price, the sudden resignation of Jeff Skilling, and unflattering media attention all began to tarnish the company's image. As always, lying just beneath Enron's surface was the truth behind its success: widespread accounting fraud. And by August 2001, the surface was beginning to erode, and the outlines of what was to come were beginning to emerge. Following Skilling's departure, Enron's leaders refused to panic. They weren't about to let the foremost pillar of corporate America collapse in disgrace. They refused to believe it was too late. But it was. This is Episode 3, Damage Control. On August 22, 2001, Ken Lay stands in his office on the 50th floor and waits for a woman named Sherron Watkins to arrive. Apparently, this Watkins woman has been at the company for some time, and she has some urgent concerns to share regarding Enron. Lay thinks he's probably met Watkins before, but he isn't sure. He's met many people in his life, including most of the leaders of the civilized world. He can be forgiven if he can't recall her face. Plus, he has a lot on his mind these days. He still can't get over the way Skilling just abruptly left. Lay thinks about the man he spent over a decade grooming to replace him. How could he have failed so spectacularly? And by leaving, put Lay in a very awkward position of having to fix his failures. In the days following Skilling's departure, Lay was stuck. It wasn't as if he could simply conjure a replacement successor out of thin air. So he did the only thing that made sense. He reclaimed the title of CEO. Not that he was looking to do so. Lay smiles as Watkins is ushered into his office. He really doesn't feel like smiling, but sometimes being CEO means smiling when there's nothing to smile about. That's what Skilling could just never understand. He just went right for the jugular every chance he got. As Watkins walks in, he sees a friendly enough looking blonde woman. Lay doesn't know her from Eve. He shakes her hand and invites her to sit. Watkins gets right to the point. She tells him about LJM, the Raptors, and all the rest of the special purpose entities that could come back to bite the company. She says she knows the lawyers and accountants signed off on them, but they shouldn't have. These SPEs are just an accounting shell game, and the analysts and journalists will eventually figure it out. She warns Lay that this could all bring Enron down. Watkins seems like an intelligent person, and she's very articulate, explaining what she thinks Lay must do next to rein in the chaos. He's sure they're all good ideas, but at a certain point he stops listening. All he can think about is Andy Fastow. Lay thought the arrangement was very clear, so clear he didn't have to spell it out to those under him. They're all grown men. They should all know the score. Lay, benevolent public face of Enron, good cop. Skilling and Fastow, bad cops when necessary, aggressive in their pursuit of money, but disciplined. Lay never asked them to do anything illegal, never asked them to do anything that could get him in trouble. He's not stupid. But apparently, Fastow is. Watkins has finished talking, and it occurs to Lay she's now waiting for him to respond. Lay asks the only question he needs an answer to. "You haven't gone outside the company with this, have you?" She shakes her head no. Lay smiles, relieved. He asks if there's anything he can do for her. She says she'd like to be transferred from Fastow's division as soon as possible. Lay responds that he'll work on it, and thanks her for coming in. Watkins leaves, and Lay sits back down at his desk, his day ruined. Lay hasn't been able to keep straight the details of his CFO's many schemes. They're all way too complicated. But he understands the significance of what Watkins told him. Fastow has put all of them at risk. But Lay's takeaway is not, how can I fix this? That's too big a task. Instead, he decides the fix is pretty simple. Fastow must be dealt with, and the attorneys have to smooth this over. The next day, Andy Fastow sets his crosshairs on Cindy Olson, head of human resources. He's only a foot from her desk when she looks up and realizes he's there. He comes at her fast with one thing on his mind, punishment. But she's on the phone. Fastow watches as she smiles and holds up an index finger and mouths, "Just a sec." It's one more second than Fastow is willing to give her. He immediately jams down the phone's hook, ending the call as she's mid-sentence. She's shocked and upset, but he could care less. He wants an explanation. It all started with her. Sherron Watkins went to Olson. Olson sent Watkins to Rex Rogers. Rogers sent Watkins to Lay. Fastow knows spittle is raining from his mouth, but he doesn't care. "How could you be so stupid?" he screams. Lay actually listened to Watkins and believed her. He slams his fist on Olson's desk. Thanks to her, Lay is pissed. Thanks to her, Lay told Fastow he has no shot at making chief operating officer. Thanks to her, Lay is launching an investigation into the Raptors and LJM. Thanks to her, Andy Fastow's career is over. He looms over her and demands what she's going to do about all this. He watches her mouth just open and close like some stupid goldfish. She doesn't know how to respond. Well, luckily for her, Fastow has some ideas. He tells her that she can start by seeing to it that security removes Watkins and her secretary from the building by the end of the day. They're never to set foot in Enron again, and he wants their computers, too. He tells her to get on it immediately, or he'll be back and won't be as nice as he was today. Fastow turns and walks out, confident that Olson got the message. She's crying, so it sounds like she did. On August 28, 2001, Ken Lay is busy and determined. He's 59, but he hasn't felt this level of pure focus since his mid-30s. These days, people are in and out of his office constantly as he tries to figure out where things went off the tracks. In his office this afternoon is a reporter from the Wall Street Journal. Part of mopping up his underlings' mess is dealing with the press. They've got a whiff of something badly amiss. He hates dealing with journalists, but that doesn't matter. This is all part of getting Enron going back in the right direction. Lay greets the reporter and gives him a tour of the office. He points out the many humanitarian awards he's collected over the years. He directs the reporter's attention to photos of Lay with his good friend, President George W. Bush. The reporter seems appropriately impressed, and Lay is pleased. They sit down, and the interview begins. Well, thanks for doing this, Mr. Lay. I know you must be extremely busy. Well, you're certainly right there. CEO of an organization like this is a high-pressure job, as you can imagine. Sadly, Jeff Skilling just did not handle that pressure well. We've had to do some course correction in his absence. I see. What kind of course correction are you talking about? Lay begins to speak, but then stops himself. He thinks for a moment and considers the proper response. Well, we must restore investor confidence in our company. What can I tell you? Enron has lost some credibility lately. We're at $38 a share. The reporter seems impatient and fires off the next question. Right. But concerns have been raised about the nature of certain financial partnerships involving Andy Fastow and... No. I can assure you that all of that has been rectified. Fastow has no involvement whatsoever with LJM. That was an important measure to take, and we took it. What have you taken further measures, Mr. Lay? A lot of people are asking questions about just how Enron generates its profits. Lay flinches. This should be easy to explain, but thanks to Fastow and Skilling, it is not. Just one more way in which they let him down. Here's what I can tell you. I can promise the world that we will, as soon as possible, make public detailed financial information which will give a better idea of the profitability of various businesses. In the small town of Fox Lake, Illinois, Joe Glinowitz was a hometown hero and 30-year veteran of the local police department. On September 1st, 2015, just 1 month from retirement, he was found dead outside an abandoned cement plant, shot in the chest twice at close range. While the town and Joe's family mourned his passing, hundreds of police officers launched a manhunt to find his killer. After weeks of searching, the lead investigator discovered chilling secrets about Joe, the local police department, and the village of Fox Lake. These were secrets that, once uncovered, would put the town in the national spotlight and haunt them for years to come. Wondery's shocking true crime podcast, Over My Dead Body, is back for a 3rd season with a story about corruption, betrayal, and the secrets of a fallen hero. Follow Over My Dead Body Season 3, Fox Lake, on Apple Podcasts, or you can listen early and ad-free by subscribing to Wondery Plus in Apple Podcasts or the Wondery app. Give a better idea of the profitability of various businesses. The reporter nods, scribbling notes. Ken Lay is mindful to steer this interview in a positive direction. That, after all, is the entire point of interviews such as these. And I'd like you to write this down too. Yes, Mr. Lay. Enron will rebuild. I can promise you that. In fact, August 2001 was a very promising month for us. Very, very promising. We're running a tight ship here. Next month will be even better, and you can quote me on that. You're predicting a good September for Enron. I'm guaranteeing it. Enron is still America's greatest company, and I don't see what could possibly go wrong for us in the weeks to come. When the interview is over, Lay shakes hands and flashes a confident grin. Once the reporter is gone, he sighs heavily. He senses the reporter was not swayed by his answers. Lay can't predict the future. No one can. And truth be told, he has no idea if September 2001 will be a good month or the worst one yet. On October 17, 2001, Ken Lay sits in his metallic gray executive conference room, steeling himself for an early morning investor call. Just over a month ago, hijackers flew planes into New York's Twin Towers. 3,000 people died. Lay watched it on television as the towers collapsed. For a brief moment, Enron's problem seemed trivial and small, but the feeling was fleeting. Ashes from the ruins were still swirling in the air when the critics started circling Enron again. People want Lay to answer questions about Enron. He has good news for them, but even good news sounds like bad news these days. The conference call begins. Lay puts on his most optimistic voice for the investors, analysts, and executives. Enron reports a strong recurring operating performance in Q3. Recurring net income is up 35%. Earnings per share are up sharply too. That practically tells you all you need to know, Lay says, adding, Enron's core energy business fundamentals are excellent. There is one minor thing he needs to mention, though, and he purposefully speaks quickly. We're recording non-recurring charges of slightly over $1 billion this quarter. The changes are a result of a thorough review of each of our businesses. We're committing to making the results of our core energy business more transparent to investors. He explains some of the losses pertain to Azurix, some to broadband, some to tech stocks, and some are spread across a smattering of other assets. He's owning up to the losses, but critics don't miss the sleight of hand. Those losses are kept in a separate basket so as not to sully the bottom line. As he ends the call, he smiles and looks up. He's surprised to see a look of confusion on several board members' faces. He doesn't know what they're confused about. Everything he said is positive. Enron is on an upswing. There is, of course, that $1 billion in expenses that came out of nowhere. But isn't it better if he puts it out there instead of critics dragging it out? This is what the new Enron is all about, telling the truth and facing it directly. Lay walks back to his office and reflects upon a job well done. He's even ordered an internal review of company practices. He's asked Enron's law firm, Vinson & Elkins, to conduct it. It will be a review with reasonable parameters, of course. He told the lawyers that they can't second-guess past decisions made by Enron's accounting firm, Arthur Andersen. He expressly demanded that they not conduct a discovery-style investigation. Lay is confident that there's simply nothing left to discover. Skilling is gone. Fastow is on ice. Everything is A-OK in Enron. and the company will be completely vindicated soon. Sherron Watkins feels ridiculous. She's sitting at the end of a conference table large enough to seat 12 people. At practically the far other end of the table are two men from Vincent & Elkins, their faces impassive. They're the only three people in the conference room. Enron is a client of V&E, and that strikes Watkins as a slight conflict of interest. This is not how she would have conducted internal review proceedings. She tries to break the ice. Well, first off, I'd like to thank you for conducting this investigation. I think it's important to... No, Ms. Watkins, not an investigation, a review. The distinction is important. Very well, a review. Yes, so, as we understand it, you suspect some financial impropriety of some sort within Enron. Yes, sir, that's putting it lightly. Well, elaborate, Ms. Watkins, please. We're all ears. Okay. Andy Fastow's investment fund, LJM, essentially he used it to line his pockets. He often ran the fund in a manner that ran counter to Enron's best interests. Plus, I believe it's quite clear he used special purpose entities, specifically the SPEs known as Raptors, to conceal company losses. Mm-hmm. So he was deceiving investors. Uh-huh. This doesn't concern you at all? Well, as we understand it, Mr. Fastow is no longer involved in LJM, so that clears up a lot. I'm not so sure that... No, I'm not sure it does, actually. Watkins feels embarrassed. She isn't cynical enough yet to believe they'd openly take Fastow's side. Fastow, who just days ago tried to have her and her assistant fired. Thankfully, that didn't go anywhere. From what Watkins was told, Cindy Olson in HR called Ken Lay, and Lay made it very clear to Fastow that Watkins wasn't going anywhere. One of the lawyers continues. Well, let me ask you something. Have you seen all the legal documents on the Raptor transaction? Well, I don't think I can claim to have seen them all. That's exactly right. And how exactly did LJM pull money from the Raptor transaction? Well, that's another thing I wasn't privy to. Ms. Watkins, seems like you weren't privy to much. We've reviewed some of your statements, your anonymous memo, for one. From where we're sitting, it seems like you substantiate much of your allegations with, things you overheard at a cocktail party? Yeah, lots of rumors, lots of conjecture. Would you agree? Actually, no. I've seen the books with my own eyes, and I know what Andy is up to. I can give you several names of people who will corroborate my allegations. Yeah. We'll reach out if we require your assistance contacting anyone you might know. Watkins remembers the moment in Rex Rogers' office when she nearly cried. What she's feeling now is very different. She's not even close to crying. She's just angry. These idiots care about covering their asses more than anything, and they're willing to destroy Enron in the process. Ken Lay did not take her seriously after all. Sure, he protected her from Fastow, but a job at Enron isn't worth much if Lay is too scared to ensure a legitimate internal review. Ken Lay is obviously afraid of what he'll find if he looks at his own company too closely. It's disappointing, and it's sad. Do you have any questions, Mrs. Watkins? No. Thank you for your time. Andy Fastow misses Jeff Skilling. With him gone, Fastow is surrounded by complete morons. Morons like Ken Lay and Sherron Watkins, who Lay was too stupid to fire. Morons like these internal review suits from V&E. They seem apologetic, beg his pardon for taking up his time, but Fastow doesn't want to hear it. They shouldn't even be here in the first place. He sits across from them in their little conference room and lays it all out like he would to a couple of toddlers. Except everything at Enron is completely above board and always has been. All transactions, all of them, were thoroughly reviewed by Arthur Anderson, the office of the chairman, and yes, even V&E itself. Do these guys really want to know what this is all about? He'll tell them. Jeff McMahon wants his job, so he's enlisted his pawn Watkins to smear Fastow so that they can take Enron over together. It's obvious. The V&E men nod and take notes. On October 16th, 2001, Sherron Watkins is back in the lawyer's conference room. They have concluded their review and would like to share their findings. Watkins braces herself for the worst, and she is not disappointed. It is the belief of Vincent and Elkins that Watkins' concerns amount to little more than bad optics for Enron. Yes, LJM doesn't look great, and neither do the Raptor transactions. All these entities perform poorly, and that, along with a falling stock price, will not play well in the media. But a big company like Enron will suffer adverse publicity from time to time. That's just the cost of doing business. The men assure Watkins that her concerns were thoroughly reviewed, but they hadn't found anything that wasn't already known. For them, it's a case closed. Watkins says it doesn't sound like they gave her concerns any real consideration at all. The lawyers point out that Enron stock is more stable than it's been in weeks. It's held at $33, even after the company announced losses. Things at Enron are looking up. Watkins just shakes her head. She almost feels bad for them at this point. Enron must voluntarily and publicly restate past earnings. It simply did not make the money it said it did. All the mark-to-market, fair value accounting, and special purpose entity manipulation is certain to catch up with the company. And when it does, people won't be asking if the stock price is holding. They will demand that heads roll. Ken Lay is in the elevator, alone, and going down, angrier than he's ever been in his life. When the doors open, he heads to the public relations department. They appear to all be gathered in a single room having some kind of group meeting. But whatever they're doing, it isn't enough. Lay is here to set them straight. When he steps into the room, the PR people look up in surprise. Usually a meeting with the boss is booked weeks in advance. Lay asks if they've seen the Wall Street Journal lately. They just look back in nervous silence. Lay raises his voice. Everything he's done to get Enron on solid ground, the internal review, the financial disclosures, the interviews, none of it mattered. The two characters at the Wall Street Journal, Rebecca Smith and John Emschweiler, are out to destroy him. Enron posted some third-quarter losses, not a big deal, but the Journal reporters made it a front-page headline. Worse, they've put Fastow under the microscope. Lay thought it was all cleared up, but Smith and Emschweiler are claiming that Fastow's relationship with LJM was unusual. They're quoting so-called corporate governance watchdogs. Those people say that since LJM purchased assets from Enron, Fastow should never have been allowed to run LJM while serving as CFO. The job of a CFO is to look out for the best financial interests of the company that employs him. The Journal is insinuating maybe he looked out for the best interests of LJM at Enron's expense. The Wall Street Journal is pulling Enron apart. It's highlighting not just the failure of its broadband division and Azerix, but the loss of $1 billion in equity and the departure of top executives. Lay is shaking, his voice hoarse, and he adds what is quite possibly the worst news of all. Enron stock is now down to an all-time low of $25. Moody's has placed the company's long-term debt on review for potential downgrade. Lay deliberately makes eye contact with each and every person staring back at him in fear. He tells them that there is nothing wrong with how Enron does business. He says it's a public relations problem and orders them to fix it. Lay heads back towards the elevators, leaving the PR group behind. He's just hired a crisis management team, and his first meeting with them is in 5 minutes. He can sense the clock beginning to tick on his career, quickens his pace. He knows that if he can't save the company within the next few weeks, Enron is finished, and Lay along with it. He won't let it happen. If it's a fight his enemies want, then he's about to give them the fight of their lives.
The new true crime podcast, Shadow of Truth, explores a haunting murder that left investigators searching for a killer and on a mission for the truth. Police found Tahir Rada's dead body hidden behind a locked bathroom door. As the prosecution and police began to pull together evidence, one person of interest became their focus, Roman Zadarov, and within days, he confessed to Tahir's murder. Everyone considered the case closed, especially after Zadarov was locked up. However, recently revealed new evidence suggests there was a lot more to this story. With new DNA results and shocking witness testimony, Shadow of Truth unravels this mystery. To hear the whole story, listen to the podcast Shadow of Truth. Follow Shadow of Truth on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or you can binge all 6 episodes ad-free and early by subscribing to Wondery Plus in Apple Podcasts or the Wondery app.
On October 23, 2001, Andy Fastow can see that Ken Lay is beginning to crack under the pressure. Lay plods into the room, sits down, and rubs the dark rings under his eyes. Fastow is not sympathetic. Lay did this to himself. Maybe if Lay had promoted Fastow to COO instead of listening to Sherron Watkins, Enron would be in better shape. Miserably, Lay sits at the head of the boardroom table, set to begin another grim analyst call. The PR department has written up an official explanation regarding the circumstances that led to the creation of LJM. It all sounds perfectly logical. Ron Aston, a fat lawyer from V&E, chimes in. He proposes an edit that identifies Fastow as the founder of the investment fund. Fastow can't contain himself. "It was Skilling," he screams. Everyone just stares at him, even Lay. Fastow decides to sit down. The others do as well, and Lay begins the call. Lay tells those on the line that he's disappointed the stock price is so low, especially since things are going so well at the company. Fastow stifles a snort. Lay recites the prepared remarks regarding LJM. It was an investment fund created to counteract volatility related to various tech deals. Fastow voluntarily terminated his involvement with LJM when it became apparent that his prominent position both in LJM and Enron made some investors uncomfortable. Lay then adds that he has the highest confidence in Fastow and thinks he's an outstanding CFO. It's a polite remark, and Fastow acknowledges it with a polite nod. It's his turn to talk now, and he keeps things cheerful. No one needs to worry about Enron's liquidity. Its banks still support it. Plus, Enron hasn't needed to dip into the $3 billion to keep socked away for emergencies. Lay asks if there are any other questions. Kurt Lawner of CFSB wants to see a balance sheet. When will it be available? Lay shrugs. The next balance sheet will be available at the usual time, about a week or two after earnings are announced. Lawner asks if the balance sheet can be distributed sooner. Lay says sure, possibly, and leaves it at that. Fastow rolls his eyes. There's no chance of that happening. Dave Fleischer from Goldman Sachs is next on the line, and he doesn't mince words. The company's credibility is being severely questioned. He appreciates that it's difficult for Lay to go into details, but now is the time for full disclosure. There's an appearance that Enron is hiding something. Make no mistake, Enron is in crisis, and Lay will need to have a conference call like this perhaps every morning from now on until investor confidence is fully restored. Lay holds up his hands and responds. We are trying to be as transparent as we can. We are trying to provide information. We are not trying to conceal anything. We're not hiding anything. The next person to take over the conference call is Richard Grubman. Fastow remembers him well. He's the guy that Skilling called an asshole just a couple of months ago. Grubman says that he did some calculations and doesn't think that Enron correctly recognized all the losses taken when Azerix went belly up. Grubman says it appears Enron took a bigger hit from Azerix than it's letting on. Chief Accounting Officer Rick Causey responds and says that it's nothing to worry about. Enron created an SPE called Marlin designed to contain the Azerix debt, so everything's fine. But Grubman says he doesn't buy it. He's aware of Marlin, and it has no value as an SPE at all. Marlin simply does not have the financial resources required to cover the large debts generated by the failure of Azerix. Causey begins to respond, but Ken Lay cuts him off. He tells Grubman, I know you want to drive the stock price down, and you've done a good job of doing that, but I think that's that. Let's move on to the next question. Fastow raises an eyebrow. So the old man's still got some fight left in him. Fastow looks forward to seeing how Lay will fare later that morning when he has to face Enron's employees. Lay enters the Houston Hyatt. The hotel's ballroom is packed wall to wall with people that work for him. His crisis management team proposed this. They told Lay it was time to face his employees directly, to tell them that there was no reason to panic, that Enron would prevail like it always has. Such reassuring words would mean a lot coming from the founder and CEO of the company. Lay weaves his way towards the podium. He tries to make eye contact with as many people as he can. He says good morning to each of them. He's going for confident, convivial, in control. But the crowd is agitated. To Lay, they sound like a swarm of angry hornets. Lay climbs the steps that lead to the microphone and pauses momentarily. Usually at this point he'd be greeted with thunderous applause and a standing ovation, but not today. Enron's workers sit in impatient silence. They're scared. Enron stock is trading at $19 a share. Their retirement savings are going up in smoke. They are desperate for a reason to believe in this company again. So with a thoughtful nod, Lay surveys the crowd and begins. Good morning. There it is. Now, we've got a packed house, and I appreciate that. Now, in any other circumstance, I would probably have a few words to say to you regarding September 11th and the many heroes that rose to the occasion on that awful day. But of course, we are here to talk about Enron, because just like America is under attack by terrorism, I think we're under attack. Lay holds for applause, but there is none, which is odd. He thought that statement would get more support. Lay motioned for Enron President and COO Greg Wally to approach the microphone. Lay smiles as Wally lists Enron's many business units and describes in detail the ways in which each unit is performing admirably. Lay takes over again. Thank you, Greg. Let's have a round of applause for Greg Wally. Of course, as you can see, the underlying fundamentals of our business are very strong. Indeed, the strongest they have ever been. But regrettably, this is not what Wall Street is focusing on. I doubt it's what you're focusing on either. But I want you to know that Enron's been through some tough times before. That's right. They tried to take us down in the 80s with that phony oil trading scandal. They've tried to take us down many times. But in each and every case, the company has come back, and it has come back stronger than it was before. Make no mistake. All of us here in this room today are being tested. It's true. Will we measure up to the challenge? True character is born in times of crisis. We need to show our character as an organization. Now, it's time for questions, and it looks like I've already got a few up here. An aide offers Lay a stack of cards with employee questions. He selects one at random. The question makes him frown, but it's too late to put it back. Hundreds of people have just seen him take it. There's nothing else to do, so Lay returns to the microphone and reads the question aloud. I would like to know if you were on crack. It's October 24th, 2001, and Andy Fastow is fired up, charging into Enron headquarters at 9 a.m. for a meeting with the executive committee. Lay did his best yesterday. Some bought his Enron shall overcome shtick, but some didn't. It makes no difference to Fastow, though. Enron just needs to show it makes money, and for that, it needs Andy Fastow. With Fastow's help, Enron will rain cash again. And when that happens, the analysts, the watchdogs, the Wall Street Journal, even the asshole shareholders, they're all just going to shut up and go away. Money makes people have short memories. It's the only answer. It has always been the only answer. Fastow bursts into the executive suite ready to talk strategy. He has ideas on how to keep Enron afloat for the rest of 2001, as well as into the next decade. He quickly takes stock of those in the room and stops dead. Greg Whaley, Ken Lay, and Jeff McMahon. What the hell is he doing here? They all stare at him, and he sees it in their ashen faces immediately. He just shakes his head, smiles, looks at the floor, then back up again. Why, he asks. Lay tells him the banks have lost confidence in you, Andy. I'm sorry, but our hands are tied. We have to let you go. Fastow usually tries to keep his rage in check when he's around Lay, but now he simply can't contain himself. There's no reason to hold back, nothing to lose at this point. A single bank expressed a lack of confidence in me, and I told you all about that myself last week. Now you're punishing me for being honest. Fastow looks for something to throw, but there's nothing in reach. He looks at McMahon and asks, so I guess you're the new CFO, huh? Well, congratulations. Mockingly, he softly applauds in McMahon's face. Ken Lay looks disappointed. Andy, this doesn't need to be difficult. Yeah, it does, Ken, Fastow replies, turning to leave. But then he stops. He has one last thing to say. I want you to know I intend to sue for $10 million. Wrongful termination. See you in court. Where you're going, you'll all be there soon anyway. That afternoon, Ken Lay sits down in his office, loosens his tie, and closes his eyes. He doesn't see how this day could get any worse. But then his phone rings. It's one of the lawyers. Bad news. The Securities and Exchange Commission has just made an announcement. As of today, it has launched a formal investigation of Enron Corporation. Next on American Scandal, Enron runs out of options as the Wall Street Journal works to expose the company for what it is. But the resulting fallout is more devastating than anyone could have anticipated. From Wondery, this is American Scandal. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Wondery.com, or wherever you're listening to this right now. If you're listening on a smartphone, tap or swipe over the cover art of this podcast. You'll find the episode notes, including some details you may have missed. You'll also find some offers from our sponsors. By supporting them, you help us offer this show to you for free. And if you'd like to hear more of American Scandal and other Wondery shows, in addition to receiving extra content, early access, and exclusive perks, you can subscribe to Wondery Plus. Go to Wondery.com/plus. That's Wondery.com/PLUS. You can also find us and me on Twitter. Search for hashtag American Scandal or follow me at Lindsay A. Graham. We use many sources when researching our stories, but we highly recommend Power Failure by Mimi Schwartz with Sherron Watkins, The Smartest Guys in the Room, The Amazing Rise and Scandalous Fall of Enron by Bethany McLean and Peter Elkind, and Conspiracy of Fools, A True Story by Kurt Eichenwald. And just a quick note about our reenactments. We can't always know exactly what was said, but everything in our show is based on historical research. American Scandal is hosted, edited, and executive produced by me, Lindsey Graham, for Airship. Sound designed by Derek Behrens. This episode is written by Hannibal Diaz. Our senior producer and editor is Karen Loeb. Executive producers are Stephanie Jens, Jenny Lauer-Beckman, and Hernan Lopez for Wondery.